All right, you're listening to a brand new podcast, Keep on Tolkien, with me, Danny J, and
Joel N.
We're here talking about Tolkien. So, yeah, Tolkien's something that's really important to both me and Joel. We've been wanting to do a podcast for a while about it, just because we end up talking about it for many hours all the time anyway. And
we thought maybe there's a chance somebody might enjoy listening.
Yeah, maybe.
And hopefully, in the long run, maybe we'll get to hear from other people.
And just ultimately, our friends are probably tired of hearing it, so maybe some other people can hear it.
Yeah, so it's a good creative outlet to spare them.
Yeah. So, just a little bit about us. I started reading Tolkien probably I think it was in 2001. I read The Hobbit right as the first Lord of the Rings film was coming out. I read The Hobbit. I loved it. It's been my favorite book ever since, up until I read The Silmarillion in 2011. And that has been my favorite book ever since. I basically had two different periods of Tolkien in my life. The childhood period of Tolkien, which was like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And I think, Joel, you can definitely agree with me on this, right? Mm-hmm. There's two different phases. Mm-hmm. So I've been into Tolkien for a long time. I've been obsessed with it since 2011, when I revisited it for the first time in my adult life. I reread the trilogy and The Hobbit, and then I read on to read the Silmarillion, the Children of Hurin, the Unfinished Tales, and the whole rest of the Legendarium. I'm currently working my way through History of Middle-earth series.
What book are you on now?
I'm reading Morgoth's Ring. I didn't start at the beginning.
Okay.
What about you, Joel?
So for me, it started with the movies. When I was a kid, it was just revolutionary for me when I went into the theater and I got to see, the Fellowship of the Ring or the Two Towers or the Return of the King. That was my life as a kid for a while. Rewatching the extended editions, at least a couple times a month, if not weekly.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, it didn't even bridge into the books until much more recently. When they told us that they were going to make a Hobbit movie, that's when I got excited and I decided to go back and reread the Hobbit book. Because I think I'd read it when I was a little kid, but that's when I really started to love it, is after I reread it as an adult. And then that led me into actually reading the trilogy for the first time. I didn't even do that until about a year ago.
It was about a year ago, yeah.
It was about a year ago, yeah. So it's a pretty recent love for me, but it just turned into a huge fire, like, right away.
Yeah, it was great. I basically had to bring Joel in on this because nobody else in my life has read. I mean, some people have read The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, but like when it gets into the nitty gritty shit, like Joel's the only one.
Well, yeah, that's also how it started off for me. And I don't think I would have gone as far into it as I had if it wasn't for you. As soon as I got done with the trilogy, that's when you were like, hey, let's sit down and let's read through the Silmarillion, which is what we did. We read through the Silmarillion with the audiobook in the background, which is how I got through it my first time. And it was
if you ever
get a whole new experience.
And when you're reading that book, if you ever read the Silmarillion, it is good to follow along with the audiobook. The audiobook is I can't remember what year it's from, but it's Martin Shaw reads it, and he's
really good.
Fucking fantastic.
I don't even want to know how many times he had to do retakes just because he has to pronounce everything so perfectly.
Mm-hmm. And he does every time.
But after the Silmarillion, I went into the Children of Hurin, and then after the Children of Hurin, I went into the Unfinished Tales, and I got a good chunk into that, and then Beren and Luthien came out, and I just tore through Beren and Luthien, and that was...
More to come on Beren and Luthien.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode. But that's a little bit of our background, so Danny's kind of a long-time Tolkien lover, and I'm a much more recent, but that's part of the reason why we want to do this podcast is because we don't want this to be something where we just sit out here and talk hardcore to the other extreme Tolkieners. I want to appeal to the people that I want to be something that I would have listened to originally.
Before you got into
I got into it. I want to show others what this is like. I want to appeal to those and show them that there is a lot more. As amazing as the movies are, as amazing as just The Hobbit and the trilogy is, the books. There's so much more. But
there's so much more.
A little bit of a ramble, but that's sort of our background.
Yeah.
But we're thinking about doing about 10 episodes. This is our pilot. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, episode 1. Thanks for listening. More to come.
For the first episode, we wanted to start off with something that we think everybody could relate to. So we're going to start off with something pretty recent. The Hobbit movies. Keep it simple.
It may be a little controversial, but...
I hope not.
I hope it's not controversial, too, but I feel that there's going to be people that don't like it, what we're about to say.
Well, we'll see how many people even listen to it.
Right, when we see how many people listen to it first off.
That'll give us a good idea. But, so the first episode, episode 1, tonight, we are going to talk about the Hobbit trilogy movies that just came out and why they suck.
They suck.
Because they do. They're just bad. I mean, as far as film goes, they're bad, and as far as the literature goes, I mean, we're going to get into that anyway.
Which sucks, because, like, I wanted to like them, Joel. Like, and we both went through this. Like, we wanted to like, especially because,
for years, it was a lot of anticipation.
Not only had, we've been waiting for the Hobbit movie for, 10-odd years, and then also, I'm a huge Peter Jackson fan. Like... Like, ridiculous. Like, even, like, other than the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I love, King Kong, Meet the Feebles, Dead Alive, Bad Taste, The Frighteners, Heavenly Creatures. These are all fucking fantastic movies. Like, and I hate them. I hate the Hobbit trilogy.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. So we're going to break it down for you a little bit. We cut it down into a few categories that we're going to try to touch on, and we're going to start with category 1.
Category 1.
Yeah, so first category is also a term that we're going to coin right off the bat.
Morgul technology.
Morgul tech.
Okay, so first of all, let's look at the word Morgul, right? The word
first, let's just relate it to what everyone can catch on to. You'd probably recognize it most from the original trilogy movies, the Morgul Blade that Frodo gets stabbed with on Weathertop from one of the ring wraiths that poisons him.
Yeah.
The blade itself dissipates into dust, and whatever's in his flesh just dissipates into his wound, and it infects you, and it brings you to the darkness.
Right. So big part of the first film, the Morgul Blade. So, Morgul technology. Morgul is the Elvish word for sorcery. So it means sorcery of a dark nature. So like Minas Morgul, which is the city, means Tower of Sorcery. There you go. So Morgul is something used by sorcerers, black sorcerers, which of chief among them, the Nazgul, right? The only people that have the power to wield this dark weaponry.
Even chief among them.
Right. Chief among them, the Witch King of Angmar, who stabs Frodo at Weathertop.
He's the one that does it.
He's the one that does it.
We don't see any of the other ones with the Morgul blades.
Yeah, are we even really sure that they carry them?
Because they carried around some long broadswords, and then in that scene on Weathertop when he gets stabbed,
he pulls out a shorter knife.
He pulls out a short blade, yep.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's how it's described in the book, but
they call it in the book, I believe they call it a knife, don't they? Refer to it as a knife?
Morgul knife, Morgul
Because isn't Anyway. So yeah, the Morgul knife, the Morgul blade.
It's a very specific weapon for a very specific person,
right?
Who's using it specifically because they are the Witch King.
And what's weird about that is they do get into that in The Hobbit too, which is weird.
Yeah, they contradict
themselves within the film. Yeah, like so, the Morgul blade. There's two really Morgul Blade driven stories in the Hobbit trilogy, and one of which is the White Council,
which was cool that they included.
Which is really cool. That's one of the things that we do like about the White. This is the White Council
because could have been done better, but I'm not going to complain about it.
Right, it was cool that they even added it because it's not in the Hobbit book at all, and it's mostly mentioned in the Book of Lost, or not the Book of Lost Tales. Oh God, the Unfinished Tales.
Isn't it in the appendix as well?
Yeah, I think it's in the appendix as well. So the Morgul blade. They find in the movie, is it Radagast? There's a Gandalf finds the Morgul blade.
So the Morgul blade came up in the White Council portion of the Hobbit movies, which was not originally in the book, but they did add it in. It did happen around during the exact same time that the storyline of the Hobbit did. So they're piecing more of the universe together with the Hobbit story, which I liked. That was cool. But part of this scene is about the White Council that's Gandalf, Elrond, Galadriel, and Saruman. And Gandalf is bringing to their attention that evil is back, even though they don't want to believe it. And
also Círdan, I believe.
Is Círdan supposed to be
I'm
there?
pretty sure fucking Círdan... Okay, me and Joel have this thing about the character Círdan.
Círdan the Shipwright, who is probably the best character of all time, but you're going to hear more about him later.
Well, yeah, we will talk all about Círdan the Shipwright. Just wait.
But during the White Council, Gandalf specifically uses this Morgul dagger.
Yeah, he throws it down on the table and he's like, look who's back.
He uses that as proof that, in fact, none other than the Witch King or the Nazgul in general are back.
By this, we can assume that these are the only people that use this tech.
This is technology. Their technology.
Yes, this is their technology.
This is their Morgul tech.
So
Paddin.
So that happens in the movie. They use the Morgul Blade to convince the White Council to go to war against the Necromancer in Dol Guldur, which is cool. That's another thing that's pretty cool about the movie. Dol Guldur is cool. Yeah. So also then later on in the movie, there's also another.
This is mainly where the gripe comes from.
This is the gripe. So that is one. I don't gripe about them using the Morgul Blade as.
The first instance is very acceptable.
That's fine. And like if they did that and they left it at that, that'd be fine. But what the shit that they do later on in the movie
is infuriating.
Is a fucking travesty. Like I don't even understand. Anyway, okay. So later on in the movie, there is something used that we've never heard of before. The Morgul arrow used by an orc.
This is during the scene, the barrel scene, where they are in the river in the barrels getting out of the elven stronghold. Bilbo just broke them out, and they're going down the river, and for whatever reason, they decided that there needed to be a fight scene here.
Right.
So they decided to add in this whole bunch of mumbo-jumbo, and then on top of that, they threw in this arrow that has a Morgul head.
Morgul-tipped arrow.
What?
Right. And
hold on.
It's an orc that shoots it, not a Nazgul.
The Witch King, the Nazgul are nowhere to be seen. They're not even fully in body form at this point, and they are also not connected with this team of orcs. This team of orcs has some bad blood for the line of Durin, and it doesn't have anything to do with the fucking necromancer. Doesn't have anything to do with the Nazgul. Like
the only bullshit that you could totally like, and this is what people are gonna say. I can already hear them, Joel. Defenders of the film. They're gonna say they mention in the film that the orcs are from Gundabad. Wasn't Gundabad a stronghold of the northern kingdom of Angmar? Yeah, it was.
And I'm sure the Witch King just left a bunch of his blades.
And he left
around.
a bunch of fucking Morgul arrows around for any jagoff orc to just shoot at passersby.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense within the films. The fact that they would use that blade as proof that none other than the Nazgul are back, and yet at the same time, some random ass orc is just using it to shoot one of the dwarves. I don't even think he has a particular one in mind. He just decides to whip this out and shoot one with it. Like it just happens, and that also leads into, I think, your next category 2.
Category 2.
After the dwarf, I think it's Keely gets.
It's Keely.
After Keely gets hit with this arrow, he gets poisoned naturally, and then they try to bring back all the shit that happened in the Lord of the Rings
They literally
movies.
do the same cockamamie shit that they use.
They're just trying to bring back stuff from the successful trilogy and throw it into the new one. But anyway, so later down the line, now Keely is dying because he got a Morgul infection that he should have never gotten, so somehow they need to magically heal them. And what happens, Danny?
The phenomenon I like to call Nandor magic.
In order to explain Nandor magic, we need to explain the 3 different types of elves, one of which is Nandor.
Well, let's just say there are many different types of elves. There's a whole bunch of different classifications. There's umbrellas. There's umbrella charts. Anyway, so the Nandor are lesser elves. They never saw the light of the trees.
This is the ultimate point, yeah.
Yeah, the ultimate point is that these are lesser elves. They do not have knowledge of lore.
And these are the elves that we run into during The Hobbit.
The Hobbit. They live, in
Mirkwood. The red-haired chick. I forgot.
Her name is Toriel or something like that.
I already forgot.
Yeah, anyway, so they add this character, Toriel, who they add to... I mean, I guess you could say they added a female. They tried to add a female character, but really they kind of defeated their purpose by just bringing her in as an object of a love triangle.
Yeah, it was. She was just a pretty silly character anyway. Not necessary, but anyway.
But anyway,
so
in the movie, she heals. Yeah, she heals the wound of. She does some elf magic shit, just like in the first Lord of the Rings movie, which. That's what really bothers me, is that they generalize it as some elf magic shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so she heals the Morgul wound with some elvish song and some Ethelas. So like
Kingsfoil, that's a weed.
Yeah, Kingsfoil, that's a weed. That's what everyone always says when they say Ethelas. Kingsfoil, that's a weed. Yeah, people smoke it. That's what they're trying to say. Anyway. So she solves that shit pretty quick, and which is like baffling to me, because you got to look at how the first wound that we the only Morgul wound that we ever hear about from Tolkien is Frodo at Weathertop.
So comparatively, so far we've got two different types of elves that worked on him. With the case that actually happened in the trilogy when Frodo got hit, let's just add in that he also nearly died, and he never healed from the wound.
He never totally healed, yeah.
And who worked on Frodo to barely save his life? We have
so let's look at that.
Not only Elrond, who is a Noldor, but we also had Gandalf, who is not only one of the wizards, but he is also a Maiar, which we can just say early on is like a sub-god, a demigod.
Yeah. They're the helpers of the...
Not only that, but
so,
both of these two... Okay.
So, yeah, what is special? So there's something special beyond them being Noldor and Maiar. There's something special about the two characters in that they are both bearers of 2 of 3 of the great elven rings.
Of power. Yes, so not only 2 of the greatest characters of all time, being Elrond, an ultimate lore master of the Noldor, which is like one of the highest race of elves that we encounter. And then you've got a wizard who is also a Maiar. That's like
and they have powers all to their own.
They have powers all to their own, but they also needed the powers of their rings.
Of the rings.
And they barely
made it. And let's just look a little more specific. This is where it really pisses me off. Because if you look at it more specifically, which 2 of the rings are we using? Mm-hmm. We're using the red ring, which gives you... the red ring's power is to inspire people to resist evil and tyranny and also oppression.
That is the ring that Gandalf has. Now, you may wonder why Gandalf has an elven ring. Well, that was given to him by none other than...
How did that happen, Joel?
That was given to him by none other than...
Círdan, the shipwright.
The fucking shipwright. But anyway, so...
We'll get to Círdan later. We'll do a whole... You want to do a whole fucking episode about Círdan? We're going to do...
So...
Coming soon. So Círdan the shipwright gives him the elven ring.
That is the resistance of evil. And then Elrond
has the white ring. Or no, excuse me. He has the blue ring, the sapphire ring. And that has the power to heal and preserve. So it literally took the combined power of the healing and preservation ring and the ring to inspire to resist evil.
And a demigod.
And a fucking demigod. And the most powerful lore master in Middle-earth.
And they barely
fucking did it.
He never healed.
To the point where he had to leave Middle-earth because he was like, this shit hurts and it ruined my whole life and I'll never be the same.
But this lower form of elf was able to just magically heal fucking Keely of this random Morgul arrow by herself.
The one that shouldn't have even happened.
And she used Kingsfoil also in the healing process, which I just want to point out also in the trilogy was not used as a healer, but as something to slow down the poison. It didn't heal anything; it just stopped the poison from spreading.
Right.
Faster.
Well,
she healed them with it.
They also use it. Remember, to heal people from the Black Breath.
Yep.
Which is like something.
Oh, that's right. They did do that.
So like basically,
they used a lot of that.
Yep, they used a lot of it in the Houses of Healing. Yeah, because of Aragorn was like always shows up and is like I swear to God, he gets paid from the people that make Kingsfoil or Ethelas because he just shows up and he's like, yo, you ever heard of this Athelas plant? It's super dope at healing and stuff.
It was something that was passed down from the Numenorians. It was part of their medicine that got lost to time. Some of the old wives had heard about it and used it in a few different things, but nobody knew like the full healing power of it until Aragorn came back around and was like, hey, why don't we try using...
Mm-hmm. And that's when they say the hands of the king are the hands of a healer, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when they're like, this is our king right here.
But anyway, moving forward.
Yeah, moving forward. So Nandor magic couldn't have happened. Wounds shouldn't have happened. And it's ludicrous that people... it undermines itself in a way that, like, I don't understand.
I can't believe it got put into film.
Yeah, I can't believe it. So... That's there. And that, to me, the Nandor magic and the Morgul tech, those were the two. Like, when we sat down to write this episode, we were like, all right, come up with two big ones. Those were mine.
And gotta tear them.
And, like, yeah, like, it's so frustrating. So frustrating. Like, I don't know how it got into the movie. And, yeah, so there's that. That's why I hate The Hobbit.
And that can bridge us into... third category, the whole business between Keely and the elf that magically healed him. I already forgot her name. Toriel. That whole love interest thing was just not only necessary because they already set up some other weird love thing going on with Legolas, but there's no way
Legolas who has no right to be in the movie.
No way in hell that an elf and a dwarf who not only would do it, but could do it.
They don't copulate.
That's our point 3. The whole
point 3.
Why elves and dwarves would not mate.
To put it
there's two things I want to touch on in this, and that is not only why they wouldn't and couldn't reproduce sexually, but also I wanted to touch on the disparities between the dwarves and the elves, why they just generally don't get along in society, because they almost never have. Well, I shouldn't say that, but for a long time they haven't. So, going first to why they could not even possibly reproduce is because they are actually made by two different gods entirely. So, in the beginning, when the original one god... Iluvatar. He made the planet and everything, and there's a whole series of events that goes along with that. But ultimately, he announced that he was going to make his own people. But meanwhile, while some of these gods were getting the earth ready, one of the 7 Valar, named Aule, he
also known as Mahal.
He was the god of the earth and smithing and creating things, and
basically Father Earth. If you want to oversimplify,
you could look at it that way. So naturally, he has this huge inspiration to create things. So he, without the knowledge of Iluvatar, he does it secretly down in the underground. I think he creates the dwarves. They actually came first. Before men, before elves, he secretly created 7 dwarves?
7 fathers of the dwarves.
7 fathers of the dwarves.
One of which was Durin, and like almost all the dwarf stories we hear about, just as a side note, come from the line of Durin.
Yeah, most of the dwarf stories we hear about come from the line of Durin, but there were 6 other lines. But
don't hear about them much. But
the elves were made by the dwarves were made by Aule. When the god found out that he made them more or less, put them into hiding or
sleep.
Well,
you remember the reason
hibernation until the main god decided he was finally going to bring about the elves and the men. Then he would let the dwarves out again. But anyway, so that's how we got the dwarves separate from the men and elves. They're made by a completely different god.
That's such a
They're differently made. Obviously, they're shorter. They're stout. They're really hardy. They can do hard labor for long periods of time, and it's a totally different species.
They're made of literally the stuff of the earth. They're like the earth incarnate, really.
Yeah, entirely different species. So that's why they couldn't reproduce. And second of all, they would never get into that whole love business because of all of the bad blood. Bad blood between the elves and the dwarves. So the elves and the dwarves have hated each other for a long time at this point in the Third Age, during the Hobbit story. And that goes all the way back to the First Age, which is some of the rich texts that we hope to introduce some of you to.
Hopefully.
And one of the things that happens towards the end of a beautiful series of events in the First Age is a battle between the Sindar, which you could see them as the lesser form of elves.
The Grey Elves.
The Grey Elves. And the Dwarves from the Blue Mountains, because in the Blue Mountains there were 2 dwarven strongholds back in the day. That was Belgast and
Norograd.
Norograd, thank you. So during the First Age, there's a big series of events around something called the Silmarils, which is going to obviously make you think of the Silmarillion. It's kind of what it's all about. They're a big deal. At this point in the story, in the First Age, some of the Sindar hire the dwarves from Belagast and Narog to use their smithing tools to take one of these most coveted gems of all time and put it into one of these dwarven necklaces that the dwarves made that were just beautiful beyond measure, and they just made the most beautiful item like ever created. And recently I actually read something where Tolkien had 2 different versions of the stories of what happened here. It was one of which
Do you remember what they call it, by the way?
What?
Quiz for you, Joel.
Oh, the Noglamir.
Yeah,
you knew
it.
The necklace.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So the Noglamir was actually the Noglamir before they put the Silmaril into it, but they continued to call it that afterwards. It was just fucking beautiful.
Why is it called the Noglamir?
Hold on. Because it's made by the Naugrim, which is the dwarves, and it's like one of their most prized possessions. But anyway, so one of the stories is that the treasure that the Nauglamir came from was cursed by a dragon, and that is why as soon as the dwarves started to work on it, they instantly coveted it, and they didn't want to give it back to the elven king that hired them to make it. And so there was fighting that ensued from there, and they stole it, they killed the elven king, and they booked it back to their dwarven stronghold in the Blue Mountains. And the second story it's pretty similar. It's basically the story where the gold wasn't cursed.
Yeah.
So
the dragon we're talking about is Glaurung, right?
Glaurung.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Glaurung is the one that was taken from the horde in Nargothrond. But that's sort of what started the disparities between the elves and the dwarves, because that led to the elves chasing the dwarves down and killing them to take back the Nauglamir and the Silmaril. And then when the rest of the dwarves hear about that, they come in a full army and they sack that elven kingdom that is known as Menegroth. And it's just
caves.
The 1,000 caves, and it's all bad blood from there, and they just do not get along. The only instance where that sort of heals is they talk about it in The Lord of the Rings, the secret door that they go to get into Moria. That was the elven door.
Yeah, that was the side door for the elves.
That was for the elves.
Yeah, in Holland.
Because
the elves of Holland.
The dwarves at one point became kind of friends. The line of Durin became friends with some of the Noldor, because Noldor were really into smithing and stuff.
Right, and
but anyway, that was the closest they ever came. But we're not even dealing with Noldor right now. We're talking about the Sindar. We're talking about this chick that didn't exist with this dwarf. They just would not be getting along. There's way too much bad blood there, and it is just well known that dwarves and elves, they just don't get along.
They don't get along. And yeah, and because we know that, so elves and men are the 2 children of Iluvatar.
Yeah.
Right.
And they intermingle.
And we see that. And so we know for a fact, based on people are the descendants of interbreeding between the 2, that children of Iluvatar can breed together. So
interbreeding.
We're gonna get real. We're gonna get into some Middle Earth eugenics in a little bit. Yeah, interbreeding. So yeah, we know that that's possible, but and because we're not even really sure if dwarves have spirits. Right.
Oh, they don't exactly explain what happens to dwarves after they die.
No,
unlike the children of Iluvatar, the elves and the men, it's your stereotypical soul.
It's known that the elves
you die and your life force goes to
the elves go to the Hall of Mandos.
They go to the halls of Mandos,
and the men, we don't know where they go.
Yeah, that's the men's gift.
That's the gift of Iluvatar.
We don't know where they go when they die. They truly die, and no one quite knows where they go. And same with the dwarves. No one knows where they go either. Do they just end, or
I always thought, because the dwarves are basically basically Earth incarnate.
Maybe that's why the dwarves were so advanced, because they were basically atheists. Like, they just,
right.
after they're dead.
That's how it is in Skyrim, remember? That's how they're...
Oh, that's right. That is exactly how it is in Skyrim.
In Skyrim, the dwarves, the Dwemer, are super advanced, and they worship the gods of logic and reason. It says that in one of the load screens, it's like, they prefer their logic and reason.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
Gotta love Skyrim.
Yeah,
anyway.
gotta love Skyrim. Gotta love dwarves.
All right, so that was the end of part 3, and I think we're just gonna kind of wrap it up from there. So ultimately,
looking like this may be a part 1, because we could
bitch about this for days.
We do literally. When we get fucked up, we just bitch about the Hobbit. Like,
this is incredibly
people walk away
controlled
from us at parties. People walk away from us,
and we're trying not to make our listeners walk away. So we're gonna end it here for now.
Please don't walk away.
We'll hope you'll tune in for more. We hope you could find this somewhat relatable, being that it's one of the recent movies. Again, our main gripes with it, 3 of the big ones that we had, being big lovers of Tolkien, were the
Morgul tech,
Nandor magic, and then the whole love thing between the elf and the dwarf was just not only necessary to have that character, but the love interest.
And it was honestly, it was just lazy writing to add that whole love.
It was pretty sad, especially how it all sparked off after a dick joke.
Let's just leave it
in
Tolkien. A dick joke. There were multiple dick jokes in the Hobbit trilogies. And next time I fucking watch them, I'm going to sit down and write how many dick jokes there are, because I'm pretty sure there's more than one.
Way to go, Peter. You really did it this time.
So, this is probably going to be a part 1, because we also did want to talk about, there are some things that we did like about the Hobbit.
We didn't even talk about
and we didn't really talk about them.
Sorry,
so,
we get so lost in the hate.
We get so lost in the hate that this is definitely going to be a part 1.
We'll have a more happy part 2.
Yeah, it'll be a little lighter. We'll talk about why we like it.
We'll try.
We'll try to keep it lighter, try to keep that hate out. Anyway, so this is Keep On Tolkien.
Thanks for listening, guys. This is our pilot. Hope it wasn't too rough.
Tune
in for part 2. I'm sure it'll get better from here.
Yeah, it'll only get better. All right, guys. Keep on Tolkien.
Keep on Tolkien.